Um, we'll go ahead and get started with the regular scheduled Board of Mayor and Aldermen Board of Mayor and Aldermen meeting. It's a little bit past 7. It's 7:25 actually, so we're getting started a little bit late. We've had some committee meetings run over. And let me get to my agenda. First item on the agenda is roll call. So Ms. Durham, if you can go ahead and do a voice roll call.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Osbrook,
Here.
Mr. Brock,
Aye.
Mr. Chastain,
Present.
Mr. Harvey,
Here.
Mrs. Kirby,
Here I am.
Mr. Neal,
Here.
Mayor Newman.
Present. Thank you. So that's everybody present. We'll move on to a consideration of minutes. We have the April 14th regular session that was held by this same Zoom meeting. If I can get a motion to dispense with the reading and approve as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Chastain,
Second.
second by Mrs. Alsbrook. Do we have any discussion or additions or deletions? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote on approval of the minutes.
Mrs. Osbrook,
Yes.
Mr. Brock,
Aye.
Mr. Chastain,
Yes.
Mr. Harvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Kirby, Mrs. Kirby,
Yes. Can you hear me?
yes. Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mayor Newman.
Yes, passes. Thank you. Next on the agenda is recognition of visitors. Do we have any visitors in the meeting tonight that wish to address the board? I don't see any visitors other than Lisa Hobbs with the Southern Standard. So I will, unless Ms. Hobbs would like to say something, I'll move on to the next item, communications. Ms. Durham, were there any communications that came in after the agenda went out?
Yes, sir. I emailed it. You received it from the Relay for Life, Carla Savage.
Did everybody get a copy of that?
They may not have. It came in late, but I emailed it to you. I don't know. Did you see it, Mr. Newman?
Hold on just a moment. Let me look for it. That was sent this morning. Okay, so this is dated April 24th, 2020, and it's Dear Mayor Newman and Aldermen and City Departments, saddens me to send you this letter, but American Cancer Society has canceled all Relay for Life events for 2020 due to the COVID-19 virus. So with that being said, we will cancel the Warren County Relay for Life event that was to take place June 6, 2020. We greatly appreciate your support you have shown for Relay for Life in the past and hope you will continue to do so in the future. We would still like to hang the banners on the light poles on Main Street around the court square from May 15th to June 30th, 15th or 30th, somewhere in that time frame. This would be our way of saying thank you to the small businesses, companies, and individuals that sponsor our event from year to year. Signed, Carla Savage and Relay for Life Committee. So I guess at this time we can take action on the request for hanging the banners on our decorative city streetlights downtown on the court square from May 15th through June 15th to 30th, I guess, whenever they decide they want to remove those.
Motion to approve that.
We have a
Second.
motion by Mr. Neal.
Second.
Is that second for Mr. Chastain? Okay, all in favor, we'll take a roll call.
Mr. Neal,
Aye.
Mr. Chastain,
Yes.
Mrs. Osbrook,
Yes.
Mr. Brock,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Kirby,
Yes.
Mayor Newman.
Yes, passes. Thank you. And that's unfortunate that that event got canceled, but we appreciate all of their help. Let me get back to my agenda if I can. Next is petitions. We have no petitions. Unfinished business. Does any member of the board have any unfinished business that's not listed on the agenda?
I'd like to talk a little bit about the budget, if you don't mind, if you want to do it here or do it someplace else.
Sure. Go ahead, Mr. Brock.
Okay. Went back and looked at the actual numbers from March, and if we could end the year right now, we'd be in great shape. Unfortunately, that's not up to us, but our income so far for the year is up a little bit. It's up about 3 or 4%. But the really good news is the expenses are down, really, really down, and down about 20%, which is good. And we got nobody except the department heads to thank for that. If we can keep that up, then we might come in with a somewhat decent budget. Also, Shirley today contacted the state and TML, or MTAS, excuse me, and there is a seminar that's going to be on this Friday talking about budgets. If anybody wants to do it, call me and I'll give you the link to that, or Shirley's got it also. One of the things that this gentleman, Brad Harris, told us, he had our numbers down and knew what we were talking about, and he has got some recommendations on what he would look at decreasing our sales tax numbers and those types of things, so that, you know, we could start our budget process and make some assumptions. They're also advising the cities to use the money, the grant money, and we're going to get $332,000 for that, for capital asset purchases, which won't be a problem. And he's got some other recommendations in here that when we start the budget process, we can sit down and talk about it. I would hope that when we do start this process sometime fairly quickly, we can actually sit face-to-face doing it. And I guess a lot of that depends upon the information we get from the state. So right now, things look great. The good news is things look great. The bad news is we don't know what's coming up. So, but I was very surprised to see the numbers as they relate to year to date, and they look really good. And hopefully the department heads can keep tight purse strings, and we can maybe get out of this not too bad a shape. Does anybody got any questions?
It's Shirley, or maybe department heads, I'm not sure. Of the 20% that were down on spending, are those things that are sort of ongoing overhead, or is it things that we plan to spend for, you know, items that we really need, but we're just holding off? I mean, are those expenses that we're going to catch up towards the end of the fiscal year?
I would say in general that there's a little bit of both. I don't think we're seeing the numbers yet for when we decided to put a hold on purchases of large capital items. So I think what we're seeing is a little bit of the portion of where we would normally catch up towards the end of the year. So
Because, you know, there was the last meeting, we didn't purchase a $50,000 vehicle that, so that accounts for some of that percentage. I just didn't know if there were other things like that. Go ahead, Shirley.
There's also quite a bit of debt service that comes due May the 1st.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of
Okay.
Yeah, that will figure in too. And I haven't had a chance to go back and look and see how much of it is capital purchases versus, nuts and bolts day-to-day stuff either.
And then,
But it looks good now, but again, at the end of the year, it's not going to look so good.
Kate, you're having something to say?
yeah, we're still waiting on the in lieu of taxes too, so that's a positive.
Yeah, I was going to ask Shirley about that. Almost every one of our in lieu and taxes numbers are either zero or minimal.
Yeah.
Do you know when those would come in, Shirley?
They're usually come in May, 1st of June, most of them, and the water we can pay you at any time. We usually
Right.
pay it in
Yeah,
May or June.
Yeah, Macmillan Electric is $435,000, and we've got 94 so far. I'm sorry.
They pay.
Yeah, they've got 94 outstanding, and water and sewer is 240, and that's all of it's outstanding.
Yeah.
And there was some franchise taxes that were pretty short too, like charter and volunteer. Charter was still owes us $22,000, and volunteer owes us $7,700.
Those come in quarterly.
Okay. All right. And those will help.
I sent Nolan a link for some training or some type of conference call that dealt with trying to forecast taxes and the possible shortfalls. And I know that Nolan's already signed up for some other things like that. So if anybody else is interested in participating in something like that, just let Mr. Ming know. And I would encourage Shirley or anybody else that needs to attend some of those things, just so we can kind of get a handle on, we're not going to know what we're going to miss out on until it happens. But if we can try to get a little bit of a forecast on it, then that's going to be really helpful in knowing what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's
But
all I have.
and you don't have to say that now, but just if you are interested, send Nolan an email or something like that, and he can shoot you whatever it is that he's attending to try to look at some of those things.
So what it is, I believe it's the same presentation. Thursday is through MTAS, and then Friday is through TCMA. So either day, you're welcome to join me. I can send out the information.
Yeah, the one I've got is the seminar is going to be on Friday, and that's an MTAS seminar too that will hopefully help us. So maybe by looking at all three of them, we'll get some ideas.
Okay. All right. Anything else on unfinished business? All right, so we'll move on to new business. First item under new business is discuss the reopening plan. As I'm sure everybody's aware, Governor Lee has, he put out a new order today, executive order today, and then he's also put out some guidelines on reopening Tennessee, and his whole, the whole thing that he's doing is called the Tennessee Pledge. And I think a lot of this, some of it's mandated, there's portions of it that are mandated, but a lot of it are recommendations that he wants businesses, municipalities, counties, all of us, because we're all employers, to pledge that we will try to do our best to follow these guidelines. And I think it's imperative that we as the city stay on board with that and lead by example and show that we're committed to sticking with what the governor's wanting to do and take all the recommendations seriously, implement those as best we can, and encourage all of our business partners and people in our community to do the exact same thing. And if we all do, try to do the same thing, then hopefully we can keep our numbers down. We've got 7 confirmed cases in Warren County now, but hopefully through this, we can keep those numbers down, knowing that they, possibly people will contract the COVID-19, and but we just want to keep that down. So, Nolan, if you could go ahead and give us your recommendation from your research, talking with some of our administration, what are some of the things that you would recommend?
So in general, I would recommend that we move to level 2, which would include the following: police, fire, sanitation, collection remain at normal service levels. The sewer plant, water plant return to normal staffing levels and schedule. The admin staff at Bell Street would return, with the exception of the front office, where we would probably go with, as recommended by the governor, half capacity. So we might have 2 up front instead of just 1. Public Works, Street Aid, Animal Control, Urban Forestry, and the City Garage, they would all go back to normal staffing levels and schedule. Parks and Rec maintenance would go back to normal staffing levels and schedule. The big thing that came up today, and it was at the last minute right before this meeting, was the guidance related to exercise. So with that guidance, I'm recommending that we open the Civic Center / mall with very limited, well, let me say this, following the guidelines that were put out today. They're pretty extensive, so I don't want to go through all of those in this meeting, but we can basically open the Civic Center / mall at 50% capacity. And then also the classes over there, as long as we are able to maintain social distancing within those classes. Also following his guidelines,
Hey, Nolan, back up to on the gyms. When was there a sort of a hard deadline or date that gyms could reopen?
Friday.
Yeah, it's
Friday.
this is May 1st, according to the governor, but I thought here at the city we would start because it's Monday, but that's
okay.
So May 1st was their deadline.
I know that USA Gym is opening May 1st.
Yeah. So
okay.
It's not as if we're just going to open it wide open and it's a free-for-all, like, or normal, I should say. There are a lot of restrictions, and those are contained in the links here for each one of these things. So again, back to the guidance, they recommend that pools remain closed, the bathrooms, playgrounds, skate park, tennis courts, and all the ball fields remain closed.
See, I would, I've been thinking about this a little bit too, and trying to figure out what are the things, the contact surfaces, right? What are the surfaces that people contact, touch with their hands, things like that. Playgrounds, to me, those are just awful for spreading germs, because kids are, they're coughing on their hands, they're touching everything, and then other kids come and do that too. So that's not really an issue. I think keeping those closed is fine. But we just redid 2 of our 4 outdoor tennis courts, and there's not a lot of people that are in a close proximity to each other on the tennis courts. I think it's getting to be beautiful weather. People want to get out and exercise, and that's a really good exercise that people can do. And you have either 1-on-1 or 2-on-2, and it's really spread out when people are playing. I would like to see us open up the tennis courts, the outdoor tennis courts, starting May 4th on Monday to people to keep that going. And then also with the skate park, and I've gone back and forth on that. Those are things where people don't necessarily, they're not touching each other. There's no close contact. They basically stay away from each other, except for the points where they're entering and exiting the gate. So to me, that's not an area that's a real hotbed for possible transmission of any diseases, flu or COVID-19 or anything like that. What are your thoughts on that, Nolan?
I pretty much agree with what you said. Just go back to the guidance though, and this is the section that I based that recommendation on. My question was, does this apply to basketball courts and racquetball courts inside? Because those two, if you apply this, it says, and other places where formal and informal group or team sports may occur. So to me, this is a little bit of a gray area.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
It really seems like to me the way it's worded, they're meaning indoor facilities on those.
Yeah.
Well,
It is gray. It is gray, but it really seems like indoor to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Racquetball courts are small, closed-in spaces. Basketball courts, you can have basketball indoor, outdoor, but basketball by its nature is a contact sport where you're bumping up against each other, pushing each other around a little bit. There's a lot of contact there. Tennis, Tim is a tennis player, very rarely any contact, unless you're getting into a pretty heated argument. And skating, those guys, they don't want to contact each other because that causes a major injury.
And
Scott, go ahead.
I agree with the tennis. I somewhat agree with the skate park, but what I've noticed at the skate park is it's a hangout. They sit together, they look on their phones together, they skate. They're within 6 inches of each other, just hanging out in there.
Okay.
Can we put a limit on how many are in there?
Yeah. The thing I don't get is opening up gyms and not opening up the tennis courts. That just seems kind of stupid to me, but
Yeah.
Well, I think one major distinction there, whichever way we go with it, is when you have a gym, we have supervision, right? There are instructors that are doing the classes that can help spread people out in their particular class, and they can direct people on what to do. You have oversight from the staff in the weight room, which to me, I'm concerned about that in general. Opening up a weight room, you've got people touching, they're sweating, they're touching everything, and then they move on to the next. You've got to wipe that down rigorously. The tennis court, though, it's an open area. You're outside. 1 or 2 people playing against each other isn't as big of a deal. So I think tennis court can stay open. Gym, I'm concerned about, but if we use proper precautions and really hammer down on people as far as wiping down when you get on and get off equipment, that's just going to be really tough.
I think that he says every 2 hours to clean it.
Right.
Say that again, Rachel.
I think the paperwork says, or the mandates that just came down, or the guidelines just say every 2 hours for wiping the equipment. I just don't
It's
think,
going to be every 5 minutes.
I think so.
Well,
And then
everybody at the Civic Center carries their own disinfectant and towels anyway. For the most part, before all this happened, people were wiping down machines after they use them, before and after already. So I don't think it's that difficult to encourage people to do that, especially in this situation, because at the Civic Center or mall, they were doing it anyway.
And then will the staff be wearing face coverings?
That's suggested.
Okay.
It's suggested that the customers wear
Right.
them too.
Yeah.
I don't know how you really exercise in a face mask, but it does say that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something. Do we have enough sanitizer to do all this stuff? To wipe everything down?
Scott?
We'll probably have to order some.
I don't know. Where are you going to do that?
Well, I've already been talking to my wife about what they get at Flex Seal.
That'll be a challenge that we'll have to overcome.
I mean, you better think about where you're going to get the sanitizer to wipe it down every two hours.
Can y'all just do bleach and water?
Yeah, I mean, that'll work.
Yeah.
I don't know if that hurts the leather or.
Yeah, I don't know about the surface.
Dishpan hands.
Yeah.
And then the doors would be open, it does say. I guess I have a question too, because the gym concerns me more than anything else. So when would you pull back if the cases start to spike? Do we just watch it and then see what happens, or?
I think we continue to follow the guidance offered by the state, which is kind of where we're at now. I mean, we're just following their recommendations.
Yeah, but we can go tighter than they do, and if we end up having a
No.
oh, that's right. You sent out a thing today that we couldn't do that. But what happens if they tell us to do something and all of a sudden our cases spike locally?
Well, let me back up to what you were saying, Everett. So as a city, we can control our own properties. We can control what we do with our gym. We can control what we do with our parks and things like that. What we cannot control is what other businesses do with their property.
Right.
We can't tell people to open or close at certain times or let in a certain percentage higher or lower than what the state has done. That's where we're preempted. Okay,
Right.
so our stuff we can control.
Yeah, I just didn't want us to start having a real problem here in town and then not be able to shut down what we control, which I guess we could.
Scott, is your staff worried about opening the gym?
I'd lie if I said no.
Okay.
My concern is if we're going to have to check temperatures of every customer, there's strict guidelines of what we can ask, what we can say, who can see their temperature, who can be around. I mean, if you got 20 to 30 people standing in line, we need some training on that.
What's the max
Scott.
capacity?
Scott, how are you testing the people? I mean, how would you even test temperatures? Are you using a thermal gauge? You don't have to touch people? I mean, you're not sticking the thermometer under their tongue or touching them with something, are you?
I believe Nolan has ordered some for the city.
Somewhat.
I'm working on ordering no-touch thermometers.
Okay.
We haven't ordered them yet. They're in high demand right now. But right here, they recommend that. Or also, here's another option, having employees take their temperature before they arrive at work. That's just another guideline that or a recommendation that they.
Okay.
Now, what I'm talking about is what we can ask the customer, how we can ask it, how do we take it, their temperature. There's strict guidelines. You can't have people around to see what these other people's temperatures are and stuff like that.
I can see this being a nightmare.
I mean, that's all covered right here. We can work through all that. I'm confident.
One thing that Scott, I can kind of see you doing is just having a kind of a curtain or something like that. If you're going to do, if we're going to follow the recommendations and guidelines, you might just need to get a 7-foot stand that has a curtain across it and put that sort of in the entrance area so that when it's someone else's turn to come in, they walk through that curtain, you screen them so nobody can see it, and then they can either go in or leave, depending on their temperature.
So
that
then
sound
should we
reasonable?
wait until we have the thermometers
Yes.
to open?
If we're going to follow that guideline,
Okay.
then yes, we need to make sure we have the no-touch thermometers before
And
we
the-
start taking temperatures.
And the sanitizer.
Yeah.
Right here's this is let me back up a little bit. The taking the temperature is best practice. At minimum, they suggest that we question
Okay.
the consumers.
But since the gym, what is best practice? I mean, it seems like, yeah.
I didn't hear
What was
that.
that, Rachel?
It seems like we would want to have best practice, which would be taking temperatures instead of just the minimal in this, because the gyms are going to be high risk areas, I believe.
Yeah, and to your point, that's what I would definitely recommend. However, getting them by Monday could be a challenge. So,
I've had one ordered for 6 weeks.
oh,
Haven't gotten it yet.
yeah. So,
Well, how about we do this then? I think my opinion is that the gym it's kind of like a playground, except we can, it's adults that are there using it for the most part, and they have somewhat of responsibility.
But
I still think it's a hotbed for transmission. I would like to hold off on opening the gym where people are touching things. I think it's not as big of a deal to open the classes, whether it's aerobics. I'm not sure about spin because those things have to be really wiped down too, as far as the handles and the seats. But I'm okay with classes opening where people are in a room separated from each other and can still do their routines. I'm okay with the Silver Sneakers program opening up because that's walking inside, and I think people are generally not just hugging each other while they're walking. So I think that's okay to open up. But I'm concerned about the gym. I'm concerned about, we have a few cases here, but I'm just concerned about you open that up and do people just start spreading it? I don't want the city to be a cause in potentially spreading this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that gym just scares me. Rachel, go ahead.
I was just saying about the classes. I've been a regular in those for years. And there is a door opened in those classes, which I think would help. I think there was rules that we had to shut the door. But it would be nice to be able to reopen that door and let a free flow of air in there. I mean, Jolene's classes are tough. And, and it's not the biggest space in there. It would be nice to open the door if we could.
yeah, that is also one of these guidelines here. So I agree.
So
Are you talking about the door to the outside or the door to the inside the mall?
Door to the outside area that I used to open it, but I think for security reasons we ended up having to close it. Would be nice to have it opened.
That's not a problem.
well, let's get some form of a motion together. So,
Well, I think
Steve,
we
go
should, if we get the thermometers and are able to adhere to the guidelines, I think we should continue to pursue opening the gym.
okay.
I don't want to
Do
just say let's
people
hold off and just hold off indefinitely.
Right. Do people feel comfortable with that once we have those no-touch thermometers, that at that point we can open the gym safely? as long as we're following the wiping down and things like that.
Yeah, as long as we got sanitizer, whether it's our homemade job or, you know, something we buy.
Okay.
And of course, watch how it goes with the cases. If they increase or whatever, I'm assuming we watch all those things for everything anyway.
What about so I think, is everybody good? Before we get a motion and vote on it all, I just want to get kind of a head nod on, are we good with tennis courts, opening those?
Yes.
Okay, that seems like a general consensus there. What about the skate park?
With limitation. I
What
think.
kind of limitation?
I mean, I don't know the square footage over there, like how it would turn out to be for people to be 6 feet apart. But I mean, I'd keep it at like half that capacity.
I've seen it with maybe I've never seen it super crowded. I don't know. Has anybody seen it? Does it get really crowded, like over 20?
No,
I've never seen that.
no.
I mean, I've seen maybe 8 to 10 at most, but you know, I just see them like hanging out there. If they're not skating, they're with their girlfriend and they're sitting close together and all their friends are there and they're looking on their phones and one's skating and.
Well, I
They're
mean,
going to do that anywhere.
we can do that. We can
I mean-
recommend that they social distance if they're there. I mean, they can do that anywhere on our property that parks are open.
Yeah.
You know, and we
I've
can't
seen-
stop them from doing that.
I've seen some guys skating in town now that it's closed, and I would rather, if they're going to be out in the public doing it, I would rather have them over there doing it because they're going to do the same thing anyway. I think maybe we just limit it to 10 and encourage social distancing. And when our park officer gets over there, he just needs to just say something about it to them. You know, hey guys, just make sure you're not crowding around each other. It's not, I mean, in all reality, it's probably not going to have that much of an effect on them except for that short period of time that somebody's there, but better than nothing. But I'm not that concerned about the skate park. Is that the general consensus then? Maybe limit it to 10 people inside the skate park?
Yeah.
Before we say wait to see how it's going. I guess I have a question. I hate to back this up, but the classes, are we going to limit the amount of people that can, you know, those classes can be really crowded one week and the next minute they're low count. I mean, there's, you know, it can go from 30 to 5. So, you know, I guess it would have to be as many people as can be 6 feet apart.
I agree with Rachel.
The
Go ahead,
recommendation
Scott.
is half of the occupancy at a normal level. So maintaining the 6 foot distance plus half the occupancy is what it would be.
Well, we
What
would
is
probably go less than 50% because, you know, there's the way those rooms are set up, could be able to squeeze a bunch of people in there, but I don't think we can have classes. But we've already talked about mapping it out, taping it down, showing how far you can go without being 6 feet from one another. And I've already talked to staff about that.
Scott, I think taping it is good. Just do 6 foot and put X's down with some blue painter's tape or something like that. And that'd be a good place to start with that. I don't know if you can say, well, this room can only have this many people or this many people, because it's more about the 6 foot, just keeping people's body fluids from being able to get out from them and get on somebody else.
There are a lot of elderly people that come to a lot of those classes too that would be an at-risk group, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Our silver sneakers is up in the 30s sometimes.
I know.
Yeah, you know, at some point there's a little bit of self accountability as well. I mean, if people know that they're,
Okay.
if they know that they're at risk, then they don't need to participate. And that may be something that we need to say, you know, or have a sign or do something, encourage people. If you're at risk, don't come. But if you're not at risk, you know, we're making this available to you. All right, so we've got skate park, no more than 10. Tennis courts are okay to open. The gym will wait to open until we have the no-touch thermometers. And then when it does open, we will follow the recommendations laid out in the Tennessee Pledge. The classes at the Civic Center will be limited to room sizes, keeping people 6 feet apart. And silver sneakers will be open. And all of these things, we will encourage at-risk people not to participate.
Can I bring up something else?
Go ahead, Steve.
I understand the ball fields not wanting team sports to be participated in, but there's also a lot of people who use them with 2 or 3 or 4 people at a time for batting practice or infield practice. And I kind of feel like that's the same example as compared to a tennis court or something, because, you know, you're very spread out. You're usually there with your relative or your coach. And I feel like if we limited the number of people there for the ball fields and the batting cages, we could open up them as well. Because all the leagues are shut down. There's no leagues going on until the end of summer probably. Nobody's really probably going to be traveling early in the summer playing ball. And these kids and parents, I'm sure, would like to get out there and at least use the fields to take batting practice. And I feel like we could limit, you know, just not prevent teams from going out there, but just limit it to 4 people, 5 people, something like that.
Scott, is there a way to lock the dugouts? Leave the fields open but close those? Do they have gates on them?
Most of them do.
That would be my concern, is that people get there, they go and sit down in that area. I mean, let's say that we keep them open. You know, we want to keep them open for a small amount of people, but let's say that a bunch of friends get together and decide to go out there and play. We don't have anybody monitoring it really, or they're just not there at that time. You know, those people are going to get in the dugout. You know, when they're batting, that's when you got a lot of people close together.
Well, it'd be the same thing at the skate park. I mean, as I'm congregating at the skate park, and really with the ball fields, you have less control anyway because they can hop the fence right now. I mean, it's a 3-foot fence.
I'm just talking about closing off the dugouts, just where there's a lot of, because skate park, I mean, there's one bench. Is there 1 or 2 benches inside?
1 bench.
There's 1 bench inside. You know, we could take the bench out, but the baseball field has, you know, those dugouts. If you had a game, or if you had a bunch of people come and play at one time, those dugouts are where people are going to congregate. I agree. I think practicing should be available to people. I don't know how many you limit it to, whether you just say under 10 on the field at a time, or what. There's no team sports, but limit it to under 10. Does that make sense?
I think at 10 you could have a baseball game.
What's that, Nolan?
I was just thinking, I think at 10 you could have an actual baseball game.
5 and 5.
9 in the field and 1 at bat.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have to be 10. It could be, you know, a few, you know, 5 or 4 even.
10 has been that number, you know, kind of the number that the CDC and the state has really pushed around, just no more gathering with 10 or more. But that's just an easy number to remember, easy number for people to enforce. All right, do people generally agree with that ball fields are not open for any organized team sports? However, people may practice if they keep it 10 or fewer people?
Then I think we can, of course, review all of this in 2 weeks to see how it goes.
Sure.
The governor may change his mind in the next 3 days. You can't tell.
Yeah.
Sure. All right, anybody else? Before we move on to the pool, can we get a motion to do the things we've talked about? Let me kind of highlight those. So it's tennis courts open, skate park open to fewer than 10. Ball fields will be open for non-team sports, but will be open for practices of 10 or fewer. Playgrounds are closed. The Civic Center gym is closed until we have no touch temperature gauges, and then we'll follow all CDC and Tennessee pledge guidelines. I think that hits everything. Oh, classes at the Civic Center may be open as long as they're following a 6-foot rule and all other CDC and Tennessee pledge guidelines.
And then batting cages.
Batting cages as well. Batting cages open.
So moved.
Can we have that in the form of a motion? Mr.
So
Brock,
moved.
motion. We have a second.
Second.
Mr. Chastain, seconds.
Who
Call
made
for a
that
roll call
motion?
vote.
Mayor, who made the,
Mr. Brock made the motion and Mr. Chastain seconded the motion. We have any discussion, Ms. Kirby?
I would just like to say to make sure that we review it and make changes as necessary. I mean, part of me doesn't want to open anything for 2 more weeks, and I've talked to Ellen about that. But as we're going ahead, I would just like to keep in mind that we may have to scale back if necessary. We don't really know what's going to happen in the next week.
Well, I think that from the power given to Mr. Ming and myself at an earlier meeting, that I think that we could still scale this back. You know, if we have a massive outbreak, then we can scale this back to tier 1 if we needed to.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, go ahead and call for the vote. Roll call vote.
Mr. Brock,
Aye.
Mr. Chastain,
Yes.
Mrs. Osbrook,
Yes.
Mr. Harvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Kirby,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mayor Newman.
Yes. Okay. I think one area that we left out of there were the public restrooms that are at our parks currently. Mr. Ming, what is your recommendation with those? Or Scott, do you have a recommendation for that?
I mean, I would go with what the governor has and keeping them closed.
Okay. Anybody else? Strong opinion one way or the other?
I think that was on the governor's list, wasn't it, to keep them closed?
Okay.
I wish we could have sanitation, like, I know we can't, but close the bathrooms, which I agree with. You also close with. But yeah, I guess I would say close. It's too bad we can't have those touch sanitation things like we have at the gym at the Civic Center. But I think that is a close for the governor.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the Civic Center swimming pool. The recommendation from the governor's office is to keep all swimming pools, hot tubs, saunas, and other recreation facilities closed. At some point, we'll need to visit that And I don't know how unless we just wait for the state's guidance on something like that, that puts a lot of people in the same area. They're sitting on the chairs that get hot, they sweat on them. It's just a breeding ground, in my opinion, for transmitting something that we're dealing with right now. I would love to. Go ahead, Scott.
One thing we do need to think about, and it is occurring, is a vast majority of our lifeguards are high school kids. A lot of them are backing out because they don't want the responsibility of having to police in the fear of this this virus.
Okay.
I don't really know how you would responsibly open a swimming pool right now. And I love the swimming pool, but I don't know how you could responsibly do that.
Yeah, I would wait for more guidance from the governor.
Yeah, I think at some point as it warms up, we're going to get some professional, some recommendations from somebody that really understands outdoor pools and
Yeah.
that what we do there.
Is there a way, and I'm not advocating for it, but just asking the question, is there a way to have swimming classes or swimming lessons or anything like that to take place on a limited basis without causing, extreme expense or anything like that?
Well, when you're teaching a swimming lesson and you're holding that pad, you come up right together, right?
Yeah.
Nice. I've thought about that. I've talked with people who teach swimming lessons, and I've taught swimming lessons. I don't know how you do that.
If we're
What
going to
about
keep the
for,
pool closed,
stroke?
it just needs to be closed. If we get into one exception, we're going to have to make another one, and it'll just go on and on.
For now, anyway, maybe you could teach WSI or something like that with the older people maybe later.
Okay. I was just trying to get a read on how those take place. I kind of thought, if you had people just learning strokes or something like that, but it just becomes one thing, it becomes expensive to just open the pool for a very small handful of people to get out there when you start getting into the chemicals and everything and keeping it up and having lifeguards. So that may not be feasible to do anyway. All right, so we'll keep the swimming pool closed until we can meet again. And if there's something that like I said, something that we need to do because we get a sharp spike in cases, then Nolan and I will make that decision pretty quickly. And if we have to come back in and have the board make a decision on doing that, then we'll do that. Whether we have to call a special called meeting or a committee meets or something like that. Do we have anything else to discuss on reopening?
What will determine what when we meet together again? What makes that decision?
I don't really know, Steve. One thing, we obviously have our regularly scheduled meetings that we'll have. And I think we need to just discuss these things every time that we meet. But if there's, let's say that tomorrow we have, I don't know, I don't even know how to put a number on it, but let's say we have 20 cases that are confirmed. To me, that shows a pretty big spike in the numbers. That could be due to a lot more testing. It could be due to, we just had an outbreak where maybe people got together and somebody was infected and it got a bunch of people. I don't know. I think that we kind of play that by ear, listen to the state recommendations, listen to our health department. If our health department, calls up and says, hey, we've got a real issue, you need to do something about it, we'll follow that recommendation and we call a special called meeting to decide what to do on it. Other than that, I don't really know how to determine exactly how we call another meeting, other than our regularly scheduled meetings.
I was really just talking about our regularly scheduled meetings. What determines when we meet in person again? You know, when we, instead of doing Zoom meetings.
Okay.
I mean, is there some
I think
guideline we go by there?
I don't know of one that exists. Nolan, do you know of one that exists on that?
You've got the universal guidelines here. I'd have to look through these as well as the other information that's been recently presented to come up with a determination on when we can. It's a little gray right now still.
I mean, I don't think there's anything in the governor's mandates that say that we have to meet electronically or telephonically for city meetings.
I believe
think
it's at
it's-
our discretion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's just an option that we have.
Yeah, I think at this point we can definitely meet together at the same place. And I'm not necessarily against that unless y'all are feverish.
It's, and I'm not saying we do it next time. I'm just saying it sure is a lot easier to communicate. And I mean, for example, MES is still meeting in person, but it's not as many people. You know, it's a smaller group, and everybody spreads
Right.
out. You know, but I was just throwing that out there.
And I've been at other board meetings where they have fewer people and they don't have to, we have department heads that need to give us information and things like that. And we just end up having a lot more people at all of our meetings than a lot of, utility districts do.
We do still own the Park Theater, don't we?
Mhm. We can always meet there.
I mean, I see the governor every day and his staff around him, and apparently they think it's safe. I see the president every day and all of the people that are around him, and they seem to think it's safe enough as long as they keep their 6-foot distance. So I don't have any problem going back to meeting.
Yeah, I think the chamber's probably not very conducive to meeting because it's a smaller area. You've got one small door to come in and out of, and you're kind of funneled, but with the way the seating is, you're kind of funneled in and out. Park Theater to me is a great place to meet. It's got multiple doors come in and out of, so you're not funneled into one area, and we can set up the area to meet with chairs and be a lot more spread out.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Well,
Do
why
y'all
don't we
want to do that? Do y'all want to do that for the next meeting? Is meeting
Yeah.
the Park Theater, the mezzanine area?
wherever?
Or we could set up a panel table up on the stage for y'all.
I don't know about that. Well, let's do that then. Mike, that's a good idea. Let's have our next meeting at the Park Theater on the mezzanine. And the question, I guess, becomes, what about public? Do we invite the public? Do we keep the public out and just film it and post it like what we're doing now with our Facebook Live? Or we do something else? Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know what the legal aspects of that would be. I think the city attorney could tell us if we have an open meeting or if we come together, does it have to be open to the public right now? I don't know, but I don't have any problem if it's okay just, posting it on Facebook or however we're putting it out now. I'd be fine with that.
Okay, my concern really is not necessarily if we have a small group. I mean, we have 6 aldermen, mayor, we have Nolan, city attorney, we have all of our department heads, Miss Durham. We've got just there is a lot of people. And I think we can get by with that on the mezzanine and still spread out. If we had the public in there too, then we're going to be up on the stage and have to ask the public to sit really spaced out in those seats. And I'm not really ready for that at this time. I don't think that's a good idea, but I think we can still get by, if I'm not mistaken, with, as long as we film our meetings and then post that within 48 hours on an online media source, then we can still meet like that.
Yeah.
And we could also say that if someone in our group is not comfortable, they could join via computer or phone.
And I'm fine with that too.
Me too.
Okay, so maybe we can set it up. Maybe we can do our next meeting at the Park Theater. Nolan, you can do it as a Zoom meeting. You just set up a laptop so that it can see all of us. And then if there's a member that can't attend or doesn't want to attend, then they can come in by Zoom. Okay. All right. Anything else to discuss on the reopening plan? Do we need to, so we've taken the vote on what we're doing with the parks and all of those things. Do we need to take a vote on our city staffing levels? Or should we let Nolan handle that in the plan that we've had?
Let Nolan do it.
Okay. Nolan, are you good with that?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Follow governor's recommendations then on those and get it back to what you've suggested to us tonight. Okay.
All right.
All right. Next item on the agenda is to discuss the Regions Bank lease extension. As everybody knows, we received correspondence from the one of the region's vice presidents using the force majeure clause, COVID-19, and asking for an extension on the lease at least until I think September, the end of September of this year, and paying the lease payment as outlined in section 21.1 of the lease, which I believe it was $2,600 a month?
26 and change.
Right. So one of the things that I've talked with Tim about and Nolan is making sure that with that, it basically becomes a month to month. And I think they can give us a 30-day, unless, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they can give us a 30-day, once it goes month to month, they can give us a 30-day notice to vacate at that time.
Yes.
During this time, what I would like to do is make sure that they are still paying their maintenance cost share. You know, we've had maintenance on the building, and that's something that we need to make sure we figure out what that amount is and make sure that pursuant to the lease that they're still responsible for paying that maintenance cost share.
Including
They pay that
the
month.
elevator.
Ms. Durham, go ahead.
They pay that monthly along with their rent. It's estimated a year ahead of what we estimate the costs are going to be and what their part is, and they pay it monthly.
Well, with the elevator coming in, was that factored into the maintenance cost share?
Repairs on the elevator have been, but no replacement would not be. That would be a capital expenditure that would have to be depreciated once it was finished and so forth, and then they would pay a portion of the depreciated value. But it would be a very small amount because you would depreciate it. I'm not sure on the elevators whether it would be 10 years. It could possibly be 20 years. So
Is that an accounting decision on the depreciation?
yes, IRS rules.
Okay. But we have paid a considerable amount of maintenance on fixing that, determining what to do with it. We just need to make sure that that's all been calculated in.
Yes, it will be.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we do recapture anything that we can, anything that's not considered the capital outlay part of it, anything that we can determine that's not just purchasing the equipment, purchasing the box, purchasing the whatever materials go into it. If there's some other, if there's something in that bid that can be considered maintenance, I would like to look at that and scrutinize it as heavily as possible.
Okay.
And Nolan, you and I've talked about your plans, at least your conceptual plans to move City Hall back into the building. Is there a timeline that you had in mind?
Originally, I would have hoped to be back there by the end of July, but that's changed now with this. So we'll just wait till they give us notice, and as soon as they do, we'll start to move back. There's not a whole lot of work that I feel like would need to be done for us to move back into the first floor.
Okay, so I know that's something that we've talked about in the past, is having all of our staff that deals with the public for payments, applications, permits, whatever, be on that first floor, that we can take that back over and give a lot better customer service. But that's something with this extension that they've put on us, we'll have to forego that and continue to stay out at Bell Street.
Well, we still have to have the elevator completed before we did any moving. I mean, to move stuff up from the third floor down, you can't go down the stairs with it.
But
Right.
you can move it into the first floor from Bell Street. So to your point, the elevator should be done before, even if we were to move back in at the end of July, the elevator will be done.
Okay.
So hopefully that won't be an issue.
Okay. I don't think that this is something that we have to take action on unless we were going to somehow deny their request to extend the month to month. And I don't think anybody's making a motion to do that. Frankly,
We can't, can we?
we could. I mean, I think we could if we wanted to. They're claiming a force majeure. They're claiming that there's some type of material or there's something that's holding up their certificate of occupancy at the location that they're planning to move to. That's, and it's the COVID-19 that's caused that. So that would be, similarly to what we have with the Civic Center. Sane has told us, hey guys, we're not going to be able to put the bleachers in when we expected to because the manufacturers of those seats are closed down. So, not our fault, can't do anything about it. So if there's something inside the Regions building that they're building that has really put them behind because of the COVID-19, they've got a great argument for that.
I did talk with the newspaper today because they had mentioned that in the paper that it was going to be the 22nd when they're opening up out there, the 19th when they were going to close, but it turned out that the information he had was from March 16th. So that information was probably old, and our information is probably a lot more, the right information.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I'm not against, I'd like to get back into downtown because I think that will help with our reopening of downtown, bringing our employees back downtown, bringing that business back downtown. But maybe it's a good thing to have it, come back in a little bit slower, let those downtown businesses reopen, and then we come back in a little bit later with all the business that City Hall brings to downtown. And that might kind of flow pretty well. But at any rate, it's a little bit more income for us as well. So it's a little bit more of an income stream than we expected, and that's not bad.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get back over there, and I will share the plan with you all. I'll email it to you tonight or tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Anything further to discuss on the Regions Bank lease? Okay, moving on. Next item is resolutions. There are none, no ordinances. Do we have any departmental reports? Ms. Osbrook, go ahead.
I had something that I didn't put under new business, but I'd like to address now.
Okay, go ahead.
I didn't get it on there because the timeline actually didn't really hit me that Friday would be Nolan's 1 year in his position. And so I didn't know if there's anything that we're supposed to be doing for some sort of evaluation or anything for him, if Mr. Rutledge needs to work on something, or if, since we do have new department heads in positions, if we need to be working on something for them also during this time.
Well, yeah, we've never given I think Nolan's tried to get us to do an evaluation. And I
Yeah.
don't know if everybody completed that or not.
And so I didn't know if
Nolan?
it needed to be maybe not handled by Nolan, but handled by somebody else, handled by HR. And if it needs to just be based on performance or what the criteria actually is, what we're looking for. But that was just something to think about, that it's his year's come up Friday. So.
Okay. Congratulations, Nolan.
Thank you.
Well, Friday, I guess. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, let's do that. Nolan, can you direct Libby to give us some type of evaluation and then make sure she follows up on that to make sure that we do it? I know before it was online, and I know you emailed us a lot of information, trying to urge us to do that in your weekly reminders, weekly kind of write-ups of the things that you do in your progress reports. So I think that's a good idea, Kate. Thanks for bringing that up. And I think it would be good for Libby to get that out to us and make sure that we do it. We need to let you know how we think you're doing.
Yeah, I'd love to hear.
Okay. All right. Kate, thanks again for that. That's a good reminder and something we definitely need to do. Okay. Any department heads that wish to give a report? See several of you on here. Been pretty quiet. All right, if we don't have anyone speaking up on that, then we'll go to announcements.
To make an announcement, I'd like to find out how many people that we'll see from the head up actually have their pajamas on the bottom.
Not gonna say.
Hey, Ben, this is Scott.
Yeah, Scott.
Sorry, I didn't realize my mic was on mute. Just to let everybody know, we did cancel the spring youth leagues. We will be issuing refunds. This doesn't mean that we don't want to have a league this summer. Hopefully when the governor allows us to reopen, that we can start registration again for an early fall league, which will hopefully be in the summer. And I just didn't feel right holding people's money at this time.
Sure. Scott, thanks for letting us know. I saw that earlier on social media and trying to let some of our folks know, but I think that's the right decision.
Also, we got a request from the health department asking for 10 tables and 30 chairs to be used at Montlow for testing this weekend. So I was just letting y'all know.
Okay. Does anybody have a problem with that?
Speaking of which, could we maybe borrow a non-touch thermometer from the health department?
We can ask.
Okay. Yeah, Scott, I think that's fine. Ask them and then let them use our tables. We know we're not using them. I think anything we can do to pitch in with other organizations that are helping with this is always a good thing to do. Okay, any other departmental reports? Anybody else that had their mic muted?
And the other tennis courts are done too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Come and look at those. They look great.
They look wonderful. I'm so happy to see it.
Yeah. Me too. And now we've got our new tennis courts that we spent, we ripped up and put everything back down fresh and new. And then we've got these tennis courts that were done not too far after that we've kind of sanded down and just resurfaced just the top layer. So it'll give us a good test run on which one falls apart first and, what's going to be our best course of action going forward on fixing these things and maintaining them. So I think that's pretty good.
Whether or not you get what you pay for.
That's right. Yeah. What did we spend, Scott, on the two that we totally ripped up and then put back down?
I want to say it's about 110,
About 110. And then what did we pay for these other two?
20,000.
Okay. So that gives us a pretty good idea. If we get, we might just have to resurface them more often, but if it's cheaper in the long run, not a bad deal. So time will tell on that. All right. Anything else? Any announcements from any other board member? Hearing none. Last item is adjournment. And thank you guys for a good meeting. I think this went really well, and we stand adjourned.